Because what happens when you truly at the core learn to love yourself, what happens is you no longer need external validation. You'll always want external validation. External validation will always feel good. It always feels nice when people pat you on the back, but you'll no longer need it. Because if you need external validation, that manipulates your life choices. And when you fill that void yourself, it gives you the confidence, it gives you the permission to express your true, authentic self in the world, because it doesn't matter how it lands. It doesn't change your value as a human being, and your value as a human isn't dependent upon someone else's opinion. And when you get to that place, that's like the true level up, a true breakthrough in your world, because you're naturally going to follow your God-given curiosity and follow your talents.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Doug Cartwright, who wrote the book, Holy Yes, We're Alive. Now what? Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from Darren Hardy. Control what's controllable. We're going to chat about that quote today. It's a timeless principle in Stoic philosophy and also in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So simple and profound, but not easy. Before we continue, let's review last week's action step, which was to start early as parents to help your kids figure out their path after high school. We provided a link to a free guide to help you do this. I have to say, now that my kids are mostly through college, I am seeing the results for all the work and effort we put in when they were young. At times, it seemed like it wasn't making a difference. But as with all things, it compounds and it takes time. And now they're getting ready to have very strong launches in life. Today, we're going to chat about some simple things about life. The ability to let go of what we can't control, stopping the desire to find and achieve something outside ourselves, and learning to realize that we have everything we need to be who we're supposed to be. It all sounds so simple, but it's really hard to turn off the noise and to turn inward. As you listen to Doug, start asking yourself, what stories are you carrying around, and what programming from your youth is holding you back from living your ultimate life? Doug Cartwright is a speaker, author, and CEO and founder of The Daily Shifts, an online company dedicated to inspiring lasting transformation of the mind, body, and soul. The Daily Shifts was born from Doug's personal journey of introspection and healing. Now an app, a masterclass, and blog, The Daily Shifts has appeared on ABC News, Spectrum TV, and in Psychology Today, among others. Let's meet Doug. Welcome to Richer Soul, Doug Cartwright. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
I feel very, very blessed and very lucky with my upbringing in regards to money and in regards to my childhood. I grew up in an upper middle class family. East Bench of Utah was very white. It was very conservative. It was a very Mormon area. And so everyone was kind of in the same bucket. So there wasn't a lot of diversity as far as interpersonal, but in regards to money, I'm really blessed because my dad, he grew up poor, and he got into this, ended up becoming a stockbroker in college and saw a lot of success that way. But his parents that raised him with very good manners, raised him as a man of integrity, raised him to do the right thing. So he took those habits into his workspace and learned a lot of really good habits and, working and doing things the right way that he instilled in his business and was successful that way. So my parents my dad actually had a scarcity mindset with money, but then learned to have an abundance mentality with money in his later years. And he instilled those attributes onto me. And I remember in high school, there was a new program that came out in high school called, the Academy of Finance. It was a brand new program, and you could take college business level classes your sophomore, junior year, and senior year of high school and get college credit for them. So I was taking classes on finance and accounting and marketing and personal finance. And that, with the combination from my dad, he really taught me more than anything to respect money. Like, just respect the money, respect compound interest, respect time value of money, right? And I learned that at a very, very young age. And I've always just believed that money was a tool. And I'm grateful for that because that showed up later in my later years.
And understanding and learning the power of compounding, especially when you're young and you have the ability to take full advantage of it, is a phenomenal, phenomenal lesson.
I remember when I turned 18, my senior year of high school, my dad took me to the local bank and opened up a CD account for me. And I remember that was in 2007, and I remember getting a really crazy high interest rate on my CD, wishing I could have it back. It was before 08 boom. And so I remember having like a really high, crazy CD rate. But I remember for my 18th birthday, he took me to the bank to open up a CD.
And that's interesting because he took you to the bank to open up a CD, but he was a stockbroker.
Yeah, he was a broker, but he very much was just like, start your saving now. Like, let's leverage compounding now while you're young and 18, put very, very little money aside. And he's like, hopefully you don't look at this account for, 40 years.
Did you follow the advice?
I didn't follow the advice, but I do remember having a really aha moment where it was maybe 2 or 3 years later, but just by putting very minimal account money away, like just less than $100 a month. And then having that account be worth like almost $3,000 or $4,000 a couple of years later, being like, oh, wow, like, I can't believe I have this much money saved. For being a young kid at the time, that was a lot of money for me.
And that is a lot of money for a kid. And that's literally how you do it. Small little baby steps add up and compound over time. We don't realize that until you actually do it and you allow the time. Everyone wants to get rich overnight, but if you allow the time for it to grow, it's amazing the results that you can end up with.
Yeah. And I think what's really cool too is I learned the power of compounding from money. And in my personal life, I understood and realized the compounding of, and I see you have the book over your corner, Atomic Habits, but the compounding of personal development habits as well, and how they were very similar.
So everything compounds. Your health compounds, your knowledge compounds, your skills compound, your debt compounds. It's one of those universal principles that it just doesn't matter. It's going to apply to every part of life. The question is are you going to use it to your advantage or to your detriment? And I think too many people, it happens to their detriment because they don't realize how those teeny little bad steps also add up dramatically over time.
Yeah. So I was really grateful for the household I was in, because what I didn't realize is when you're raised in that type of household where you respect money and we had enough and we could get whatever we wanted. I mean, we weren't buying crazy things and going on these extravagant experiences on yachts. We didn't have like crazy money, but anything we wanted, we got, in a sense, like, we earned it. So there was always enough. And as I got later in my life, I learned to really, really appreciate that, as I had friends or, girlfriends who come from homes where like money was a really big deal. And there's a big negative connotation around money and a big scarcity mentality around money. And I can see how that affects almost every aspect of their life. And it wasn't until I got to my late 20s, where I realized and became extremely grateful for the household that I was raised in, because a lot of people have a negative relationship with money.
So you were raised in a nice family, in a nice neighborhood, and everything went well. So you must have had the perfect life, right? That's
how it works, right? So it's funny. It was funny because I remember later in my life, when I was 27, it was the first time I sat down with a therapist. And the first question she asked me, she goes, "What's your trauma?" And I look at her funny. I'm like, "Me? Like, I have no trauma. My childhood was perfect." And she just laughed at me. She's like, "Okay, yeah, we'll see about it. We'll dive in." And she just kind of like shrugged it off. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "No, my childhood was amazing. It was perfect." And then, of course, later on, once you really dive in deep to these subconscious stories, you're like, "Oh, yeah, I actually have a ton of trauma."
Do you want to share some of that, right? Because it's kind of your backstory as to what occurred.
Yeah, what I realized in my life was we all have, my favorite quote in life is by Carl Jung, who's really famous psychologist and philosopher, who says, "Until you make the subconscious conscious, it will guide your life and you'll call it fate." And to me, what that means is we've all had experiences when we were children, and it created a worldview in our minds of how the world needs to be, or how the world should be, or how the world is. And we cement that worldview into our subconscious because we're so young. And then we go about into the world trying to prove it wrong or trying to prove it right, because that's how we think the world is. And so for me, as silly as this sounds, my first subconscious story about my life happened when I was in second grade. So I grew up overweight. I was a little kid, I was a little chubby, happy, fun kid, right? And when you're in second grade, you're not comparing your bodies. You're not self-aware enough to know that you're really the overweight. You're just in second grade, and all you care about is recess and what snacks you're having after when you get home and what's on Nickelodeon that night. And I'll never forget, I can still remember it vividly to this day. I was out on the playground, and these older gentlemen, one kid was actually really scrawny, but he was, fifth or sixth grader, older kid. And he started teasing me and called me fat. And in that moment, I didn't really know how to process that when you're so young, but in that moment, a story I created about myself was that, oh, if I'm fat, that means something is wrong with me. And if something's wrong with me, I must not be enough as the average kid. I'm not normal, and I'm playing from a deficit. So now I want to be normal. I want to get validated. And if something's wrong with me, I now have to go out into the world and prove and hustle to gain my worth in the world. And growing up overweight as a kid, it's the first thing I would assume is the first thing people would see me. So when you first meet me, I can't hide that I'm chubby or overweight. And so you immediately see it. So I'm starting as a deficit. So now it's I'm going to go out into the world and try and prove to you why I'm valuable and why I should be enough. And that was kind of the first subconscious story. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I realized, I was like, wow, my whole life I've been hustling and grinding and trying to get everyone and trying to get the world to tell me that I'm enough. And interesting enough for me, tying it to the money thing, in my early 20s, I became really, really financially successful. For my age group, being 22, 23 at the time, I was in the top 1% of the nation, 22-year-olds, making, by the time I was 24, I made $1 million. And at that point, I was really just trying to prove to the world why you should value me, because our society values wealth. And so I finally had wealth. And so I had everything my dad taught me went out the window, and just had completely terrible spending habits because I was trying to heal this story I told about myself that why I wasn't enough.
And yet you didn't realize that when you went to the therapist.
No, not in the first time. No, it took me a lot of work to realize that. I just thought, well, I was young in 20s and I did what any other 20-year-old would do when you give them a chunk of money like that. I went out and bought a sports car and traveled the world and got a nice, place to live and partied and went to the Super Bowl and the NBA Finals and the World Series and flew first class and bought nice clothes. And, I just like, well, that's what anyone else would do. And there was a window of opportunity in my early 20s looking back where it's like, if I was smart with my money and did what my dad told me to do, I could be in a very, very, very nice situation right now. But I didn't, because I was trying to heal this wound and this story of my childhood.
So what happened next?
Yeah. So along those times, and tying it back, taking a step back, two things happened in between this time. The first one is my dad actually passed away. So he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer in 2010, before I had made any money. And he died shortly after. And I'll never forget sitting outside his bedroom door a night or two before he passed. He had home hospice care. And my mom puts her arm around me to like comfort me. And inside of me, I feel this immense amount of sadness and despair and grief and depression and loss. And it comes up. It starts in my gut and starts coming up my chest. And then I start to cry and sob uncontrollably, as any, young 19, 20-year-old would do when your father, your idol, dies. And I felt that for about a whole 3 seconds. And then I cut it off because I was thinking, I need to be strong for my mom. I need to be the tough guy. Men don't cry. I shouldn't show my emotions. I don't want to look weak. So I took all that emotion that was trying to come out and I just shoved it back down. And I just let it fester and I didn't deal with it. And so that stayed with me for a long time. And then on top of that, before then, growing up in my religious community in the Mormon church, there's an expectation of you when you're 18 to go on a service mission. And basically a service mission is when you dedicate 2 years of your life to proselyting and trying to convert others to Mormonism. So you're knocking on doors, you're wearing the name badge. You get sent to a random place around the world. And for 2 years, you're 100% committed. There's no TV, you don't have a smartphone, you're not dating. It's like 2 years of a very intense, concentrated missionary work. And before you leave, there is a standard of living standards you're supposed to abide to. So you, in a sense, are whole and worthy and have, God's presence with you. And I had a girlfriend before I left, and there's no sex or none of that before you're supposed to leave. And I had my big farewell party. I had said goodbye to everyone. I had had my plane ticket. I had my bags packed. And the night I was saying goodbye to my girlfriend, we got intimate and we broke some of the rules. And I remember thinking oh my gosh, I can't come clean of this. I can't come out and tell people that I broke the rules. There's too much shame and guilt around that. I would be an outcast in my community. And so I shoved that back down in emotionally. So 9 months later on my Mormon mission, I felt the guilt of that was just crushing me. So I finally confessed to my mission leader, and the consequences were that I actually got kicked off my mission early. I got sent home. So then I fly home early and I have to deal with the guilt and the shame of my community and coming home early. And what are the neighbors going to think? And what is the ward members going to think? And what are my friends going to think of me for having screwed up? So it's I have all of these stories compounding, starting back from I'm the fat kid. I don't deserve love. Something's wrong with me. Now I'm not a good member of my community and my society because I've screwed up my mission. And now my dad, who I lost, who I love the most, has passed away, and he's gone, and I don't have his guidance anymore. And so when I kind of landed this money in my early 20s, it's I finally have an asset. I can win the respect back from my community. So let me show you how much money I have. I'm going to buy the car and post it on Instagram and go on the trips and shove it down your face and wear the nice clothes and, do all the crazy things just to show you why I'm valuable. And I fell victim to what I've coined as the success void, right? And the success void is when your life looks very, very good on paper. I were to hand you my resume, you'd been like, oh, wow, this kid's 25 years old. He's made, close to $2 million in his life. He drives a nice car. He's got a great job. He's got a great title. He's got people working on him. He's, in the self-development world. He's, this looks great. But I had like this really, really deep void of unfulfillment. And it was caused by, leaving the church and losing my dad and, being the fat kid. And then that just built and built and built and built and built. And it was about to explode until one night, my entire life completely changed overnight.
What happened that night?
It sounds crazy, and it still kind of doesn't sit fully settled with me. But I'm going through this part of my life where I'm just lost, where it's like I've done everything I was supposed to. Like society says, go make money and be rich and successful and buy cars and have cool things and buy watches, and I did all that. And I didn't have like crazy jet money, but like I was doing very, 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 very well. And I'm like, this isn't the answer. Like I know that more of this is not the answer. And I was spending it so fast. I was spending money like crazy. I remember on average, I think I had like a couple months in a row where my average credit card bill, just credit cards, not bills, like just buying stuff on my credit card was either 20 to 25K just every month. And I'm just like, what? I'm just buying stupid stuff. Like it's just worthless. And so I'm in this success void. I'm searching for something more. The religion thing didn't work for me. My dad's gone. I'm the fat kid. I don't fit in society. Like the money thing isn't working. So I'm kind of just spinning. And I come across this book that completely changed my life called Stealing Fire. And it talks about flow state. So the purpose of the book is like, okay, how to get into the zone, right? The flow state. So whether you're an athlete or a musician or an artist or a surfer, when you're just like, or a coder and you're just like in the zone and everything's coming so easily and you're just doing really good work and you lose track of time. So I pick up this book and I'm thinking, oh, cool. Like I'm a salesman and a leader and a sales leader and a sales recruiter. I would love to have more flow state in my life because it'd be equal better performance. And it gets to a part in the book where they talk about psychedelic compounds. And growing up in, upper white, middle-class Mormon conservative Utah, like you're taught that every drug is basically meth. And if you do it one time, you'll be addicted for life, then you'll be homeless, then you'll die. And it's like, that's just what it is. And so there was no conversation. It was such a profound, unique viewpoint. And in the book, they talk about psychedelic compounds. They talk about MDMA. They talk about psilocybin mushrooms. They talk about LSD, and they talk about DMT, which is found in ayahuasca and whatnot. And I'm reading the therapeutic benefits and the amazing research papers and analysis done on these compounds in regards to people with depression and anxiety and how it helps unlock information for people and how they have breakthroughs. And I'm reading this like with my jaw on the floor. I'm like, what? Like, this sounds like crazy talk to me. And I'll never forget when I read the quote from Steve Jobs, who said, doing LSD was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And I remember thinking, here's Steve Jobs, someone who literally changed humankind. He changed the direction of us as a species. He's world renowned. He's looked up upon as probably the greatest entrepreneur in the history of humankind. He created the world's most valuable company. And here he is talking about a positive experience from working with these compounds. And I remember thinking, like, there's something here. Like, there's something in this area. And coincidentally, 2 weeks later, I'm at a party with a friend, and I get offered one of those compounds. And I'm like, I've never even been offered this stuff in my life. 2 weeks after reading, and I get offered, I'm like, I have to give this thing a try. So I have my first experience on June 10th, 2017. And the experience was so profound and so deep and so eye-opening and so earth-shattering, and it was so completely flipped my worldview and around, where I was experiencing energies and connections, and my brain was thinking differently. And I felt like I pierced the veil of reality. And that experience left me so curious and open and engaged that it led me down a deeper journey of working with more different psychedelic medicines such as psilocybin and ayahuasca that really, really helped me start healing my trauma, start healing my wounds, start healing my stories that I had about myself. And, you know, you said when I first sat down with therapy before I did this, I'm like, oh, I don't have any trauma. I then went to go work with psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca and realizing, I'm like, oh my gosh, the big piece that I've been missing in my life, like this big key to feeling fulfilled, is that I don't feel like I love myself. I don't feel like I'm worthy of love because I felt like I was a fat kid, because I felt like I'm abandoned because my dad died. I felt because I don't belong in my community because of my church. And that was the start of the process of learning to love and like, I know this sounds super corny, but like learning to love myself, right? And realizing my relationship with money I had a strong foundation in my relationship with money. And that changed because I was using money to fill a void within myself and working with those psychedelic compounds. And psychedelics are not for everyone, for sure. And there's other ways to get there, but that was the tool that I used to deal with some of my traumatic experiences of my life.
And so that one little phrase, I am enough, and belief in it changes so much.
Your entire life.
Your entire life. And it is that simple and that easy. There's someone out of England called Marissa Peer. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she's got a video on literally that thought of I am enough. She gets called in when psychiatrists can't help people. Like, you know, the psychiatrist has been with them for 10, 20 years. They might be suicidal. They're breaking down and they have not had success. And she literally just introduces them to that concept that you are enough. And when you can believe that, then that's when you feel you can be loved. And all of these things kind of get let go. Because most of society tells you the opposite message. You're not enough until you buy the car, the watch, the house, until you have the money. But all of that doesn't fix the underlying problem. And for anyone listening, everyone is enough. Like the universe is giving you what you need to be enough of. And I think that's kind of the aha moment that people need to understand.
And now that you say that, I believe I've seen her video online where she's working with like an actor, right? Who has like all of the awards or whatever.
Mm-hmm. He's got the BAFTA. And he's right. Do you know how hard it is to have a BAFTA? He wouldn't let people drive up to his front door without the right vehicle. And he's fat and he's overweight and he's miserable.
Yeah. And I say that in my book, chapter, I think it's 6, is titled Self-Love is a Superpower. Because what happens when you truly at the core learn to love yourself, what happens is you no longer need external validation. You'll always want external validation. External validation will always feel good. It always feels nice when people pat you on the back, but you'll no longer need it. Because if you need external validation, that manipulates your life choices. And when you fill that void yourself, it gives you the confidence, it gives you the permission to express your true, authentic self in the world, because it doesn't matter how it lands. It doesn't change your value as a human being, and your value as a human isn't dependent upon someone else's opinion. And when you get to that place, that's like the true level up, a true breakthrough in your world, because you're naturally going to follow your God-given curiosity and follow your talents. And I love it. I just barely noticed this over your right shoulder. You've got Awareness by Anthony DeMello, right? That's like all time. That's like my Bible, you know, and he talks a lot about this of like going in and doing that work.
Yeah. He has another book, that came out. Now he passed away a long time ago, but they actually published another book of his, and Don Goey was just on the podcast to share that and talk about how do you have awareness. And we talked a little bit about Anthony. He was a Jesuit priest and he was a funny guy, and he would just tell people to wake up. He's like,
he just told it how it is.
He just told it how it is, and had a phenomenal following. Unfortunately, he passed away at a young age, and but I have loved his work, and I've watched they've recreated some of his videos. They're all available on YouTube, and it's definitely worth watching. It's all about waking up.
Yeah, his book absolutely influenced my book, Holy Shit, We're Alive. It absolutely is like, it definitely had made an impact on me.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So what inspired you to write the book?
You know, my book it's so interesting because there was never this moment where it was like, okay, I'm going to do a book. It kind of just happened. And there was this period of time from, my first psychedelic experience that really led me on like a 2-year journey where I felt like I mean, as weird as this sounds, I don't feel like I was on Earth for 2 years. I was like blown out of this canyon into like this, unto my awakening, like, how Anthony Mello says, wake up. And, that was one of the books that guided me through my journey. And I was just I went and I'm like, okay, if Mormonism isn't true for me, and like what in the actual hell is going on planet Earth right now? Like, how are we here? So that led me down to go work with, spiritual gurus and psychologists and go to Burning Man and go to Bali and do the woo-woo stuff and do crystals and do Reiki and do, astrology and tarot cards. And I'm just like, if anyone has any claim to truth, I'm doing it. So I'm doing float tanks and I'm doing the mushroom ceremonies and I'm doing the breath work and in Tulum in the jungle. And it's like, so I did like this crazy kind of 2-year journey of trying to figure it all out. And I learned a lot of really valuable tools that were very simple, but seemed very profound for a lot of people kind of in my old world of like grit, grind, type A, go make money. And I realized that this spiritual world is so loving and so nice and can be so healing to enhance our experience. But the current way that it's being presented, there's too big of a gap. Like to the average person who's not spiritual at all, that's, a workhorse, hard worker, want to go make tons of money. The way that current spirituality, it seems weird and unapproachable. Right. And so I'm like, okay, I used to be that way. Now I went to this other world. How can I present my story in a way that makes sense for people in an approachable manner to help inspire others to go on their journey into healing? Because when you truly learn to heal yourself, the quality of your life, the depth and the richness of your life goes up tenfold, and you're not even aware that it can. And that's the big secret is people aren't aware. People are so, if you take a happiness scale of 1 to 10, people are so used to living at a 5 and a 6 that they think that's the top. They think they're at a 5 so much, and then sometimes they get a 6. They think that 6 is a 10. Right. And what I learned is when you do the healing work, you break through to those other layers of 7, 8, 9, and 10. And you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was possible to feel this good. I didn't even realize it. And so that's what the intention of my book is, to share that message.
And what are some of those simple tools that you found that were so valuable?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because in the book where I tell people when you have especially the psychedelic experience, you can't get it until you get it. Like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so the book is my verbal expression of how I can share what I saw in a verbally way and share that message. And the biggest tool I talk about, right, is understanding and diagnosing the story that's guiding your life, whether you're aware of it or not. For me, I was the fat kid. I kind of always knew I was a fat kid, but I didn't realize the depth and control it had on me directing my life. And so the first tool I'll share with, especially with the listeners, is ask yourself, what are you the most ashamed of? What would you be terrified if the world finally found out about you? Like what are you trying to prove the world wrong? And that could be, I'm the fat kid, I'm the skinny kid, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I've got a substance abuse issue, right? I've got this addiction, whatever it may be. And that's kind of the starting point of understanding where your story started, and just really ask yourself, when was the first time you felt like you weren't enough? And I think just heightening the awareness around your story is the first step, because if you're not aware of your story, you don't have a choice. It's just going to subconsciously guide your life. And just heightening the awareness around it gives you the opportunity to make new choices.
You know, it's funny. People who listen to the show start to ask themselves the question of, how did I learn about money? Because that's the first question I asked you, because we all have money scripts, right? But we also have all kinds of other scripts beyond money scripts, you know, and understanding what those scripts are and then challenging them. Because if you've got a script from when you were in second grade and it's controlling you at 35, you have a major problem, because you're behaving like a 9-year-old in a 35-year-old's body. And nobody talks about the fact that we need to go back and examine all of these things and challenge our belief systems and then slowly reprogram ourselves, because this is not an overnight success story, right? You went on a 2-year-long journey that was pretty in-depth. Not everyone can walk away from life like that, but you can take steps forward.
Yeah. And what's interesting too about that too is my first initial scripts I learned about money, I felt were taught incorrect principles, right? I was taught from my dad, who was a financial advisor and a stockbroker, who taught me about compounding interest when I was 16 and how to respect, value money. But the script of I'm not enough overrode the money script to heal that when I came into money in my early 20s. That's how powerful our subconscious stories are. Because even if you have a good script about money, mine was overrode by the I'm not enough script.
Well, and it's true for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone has the answer to that question of I'm not enough because of X. And that's kind of what you said people should look at. Very much so. So it's really about reinventing yourself at the end of the day. And you have the ability to do that and pick your new you.
Yeah. And I think it's less of reinventing yourself and more of removing the blockages that are stopping you from being your authentic self.
So one of the things we talk about is creating a life plan and living in alignment or in harmony with that. And that's literally, I mean, that's kind of what we're saying here. You got to figure out who you are and then live in harmony with it and figure out your particular plan. Too many people are chasing someone else's plan because they didn't take the time to think through what they really wanted.
Yeah. And I love that too, because, you know, I'm a big believer in, like, I know you read the book, but yeah, I know you can't predict the path. Right. And so I love saying big goals held loosely. And as long as you are in an alignment and integrity with who you are as a person, you'll be able to navigate the course, because you're going to go really far right and you're going to go really far left, and you might go upside down and you're not planning on it. But if you're in integrity, you can move with those waves with a lot more ease and less resistance, because you're true to yourself. And when you're living someone else's plan, when it goes off rails, because it will, that's a really intense suffering experience, because you're so attached to it looking a specific way. When really life, everyone listening could not have predicted the last 3 years of their life. No one, right? And so it's really important to have a plan and know which direction you're heading, but being open to a misdirection and moving with that with ease and integrity.
And we had on Bob Johansson once. He's a futurist. And he pretty much, that was his main message was, you know, when you're planning out for 10 years, be certain on where you're going to be in 10 years, but don't be certain on how you get there, because if you're certain on how you're going to get there, you're going to fail. And it's just like, you know, whether you're in an airplane or a ship, you know the port that you want to go to, but 99% of the time you're off course because you're going left, you're going right, you're getting hit with wind and waves and life and all of the things that happen. But as long as you have certainty to course correct constantly and say, okay, what next? How do I get back to where I want to go? It all works out. But like you said, there is no set path to the top of the mountain. There's a million directions, and one will work for you if you keep showing up and if you take the next step and if you kind of let go.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of close my book with, is the chapter of movement is life, right? You have to take movement. And I think what happens to a lot of people, whether it's a relationship goal or a health goal or a financial goal, is they see the magnitude of the mountain. And because the mountain looks so big, it paralyzes them. So they don't make any moves because they're waiting for the perfect time to start when everything lines up. And the perfect time never shows up. And that's why I say movement is life. Just get to the next set point, get to the next stepping stone, and then reassess where you are. Because like you said, the path is going to look different for every single person.
That is so true. And one of the things you talked about, a friend of yours, Casey, and about how his attitude was to be happy now. And I think too many people are also, I'll be happy when. Would you like to expound on that and what he taught you?
Yeah, I feel like so many people live in happy when syndrome, right? I'll be happy when, like, my ship is just around the corner. It's about to come in. Like, as soon as I get these finances figured out, or as soon as I just lose a little bit of weight, or as soon as the kids get good grades, or as soon as we just upgrade our car, as soon as we get that new house is done, then everything will be okay. So it's happy when syndrome. And a really valuable lesson I learned from my greatest mentor, Casey, who is the epitome of success, in my opinion. He's got a beautiful family. He's an investor. He's got a really nice net worth and has the freedom to do what he wants. And he's such a giver, and he's a happy, optimistic person, and he's full of love and integrity. And I mean, he really is like, he's a superhero in my world. And I remember, I share the story in my book, but I went golfing with him. This was about a year ago this time, to celebrate. He had a large buyout from one of his companies, and we were golfing. And I asked him, I'm just like, hey, what do you think your superpower is? And thinking it'd be along the lines of like, well, I'm a really good networker and I've been able to get on some of these good investments at the beginning, or I'm really good with people. I'm a strong communicator. And he just said to me, he said, I've always loved where I was. And what he meant by that was, when I was poor and newlywed, I loved it. When I was a junior associate, I loved it. When I was an assistant manager, I loved it. When I was a door-to-door sales rep, I loved it. And he was just so appreciative of where he was in his journey. And he wasn't trying to get somewhere. He didn't have this constant kind of restless energy of trying to just, as soon as I get to this next set point, then things will be okay. He really embodied and was fully present in the moment, knowing that it was going to get better. And it really is the definition of what I've kind of recently landed on, as the definition of contentment, which is completely accepting where you are on your journey while being optimistic of a better future. Not wanting it to change, not trying to rush there. And that was such a beautiful lesson to me. And I try to embody that in my everyday.
And I think you hear a lot of people say that, especially on the financial journey. I'll be generous when X, or I'll be happy when X. And if you're not happy now, over time, your success will magnify your unhappiness. It won't actually lead to you becoming happy. And so that is the perfect advice. Be happy now. Enjoy the moment. It's the present, right? Which is a gift.
Yeah, it is. And I think that the technique, and you said it, the technique to switch from happy when syndrome to happy now syndrome is gratitude, right? Being grateful for what you have, grateful for your experiences, grateful for the situation you are in now, because this version of you right now, you're never getting back. We're only getting older. Our bodies are changing every day. We're never going to get this young, vibrant version of ourselves back. And so, switching the tool used to go from happy when syndrome to happy now syndrome is gratitude.
Very interesting. And that's true. You to be grateful in the moment. I mean, we do have a wonderful life, and I don't think people realize how wonderful it is and how blessed they are, especially if you're listening to a podcast. You're probably in the top 1% of the world. Yeah. And for that, you should have gratitude. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you talk about, and I'm a big fan of Stoic philosophy, is control the controllable. Mm. And I have struggled with this one most of my life, and I want to control everything. And I'm learning to let go and understand that things may not get done on my schedule and that there's a lot of stuff I can't control. I just got to let it go and not even fuss over it anymore. What were your thoughts on that when you wrote about it?
Yeah, it was actually a pivotal moment in my whole life because I actually read that book. First, that quote comes from Darren Hardy in the book, The Compound Effect. And I first came across that quote in probably 2012, and I loved it. And I remember that really stuck with me. And where it actually like resonated with me deeply was actually in 2018. I was going through this major transitions from my job, from my religion, dealing with the death of my father. The girl who I thought I was going to marry had just dumped me. And for the first time in my life, I experienced suicidal thoughts. And I had shame about that. I felt really guilty. I felt like I needed to man up. And, with the help of a professional, I was able to dig myself out. But where the turning point happened was I realized that I had outsourced all of my self-love to this girl, Lauren. And I kind of put her in charge of my happiness. And that was just really daunting for her. And I don't blame her because she felt suffocated. But I realized I'm like, wow, I don't love myself. But that's something that I can control. I can control my own happiness. And so I remember I was walking in the woods in Arkansas one morning when that dawned on me. I'm like, oh, control what's controllable. I can control self-love. Okay, let's play it backwards. What else can I control? I can control how my physical body feels for the most part, right? I don't have in my life, I haven't had any serious injuries or diseases. So I can pretty much control that. So it's like, okay, I can control how much I sleep. I can control what I eat. I can control my hydration levels. I can control how long I meditate. I can control if I journal. I can control if I exercise. I can control if I can get sunlight early in the morning. And just realizing I can control all of those things, then realizing I can't control other people. I can't control places, and I can't control things. So all of that energy I was using trying to control other people was just a waste. And like, if I can redirect that energy onto my inputs that I can control, I feel like that would equal a very profound life. And I think that's a common trend you see in most self-help books. I mean, just over your shoulder, I can see 20 books that I've read where I'll have similar messages of like, learn to control these habitual inputs and equals and I think that controlling your habits and your inputs that way equals a better life. And not just me, but so many other authors have proven that as well.
And it's true. And it's funny. You said, I think you read it in 2012. It took you 6 years for it to sink in.
For it to hit,
right?
Yeah.
All these books have very similar messages. And if you go back to Stoic philosophy, again, it comes back to very similar messages.
Mm-hmm.
And that is literally one of them is learn to control the controllable and let go of everything else and understand that you have everything you need to be successful in life if you'll just let it be.
And not to cut you off, but I love that idea so much. And I think that what I'm trying to convey in my book is when you take that piece of control what's controllable in the Stoic philosophy and the habits and combine this, whatever word you want to use, spiritual, God-like, thing we can't see, soul, universe, divine. I use the word the universe. And the combination of healthy habits and goal setting while relying on the unknown of God and the universe together, when you merge these two worlds, it creates for a very deep, enriching, fulfilling human experience.
I remember a quote. It's, we are spiritual beings and, we are not enjoying a human life. We're not human beings enjoying a spiritual life. Yeah. And I think when you shift the way that you look at it in your attitudes, then things do start to open up and unlock.
Yeah.
For people who are listening, what's kind of that one step they can start with to maybe become more aware?
I think a really good starting point, if you've never really done self-development, self-awareness work, in a really easy way, is asking yourself, what is my intention behind everything you're doing? From the conversations you're having to what you're doing in your free time, to how you entertain yourself, to your personal relationships, to your co-working relationships, to the direction of your life, to your goals and your wishes and your wants. What is your intention behind them? Why are you doing it? Because I feel like so many people are just kind of doing things because they're told to do them. They don't really know why. And if you can identify the intention behind what you're doing, you'll be able to find the real root of kind of the source of all of your decisions making. And that's a really good place to start if you've never done self-awareness work.
And we've all been told what we should be doing and what it means to be successful. But most people don't have the courage to challenge that. They wake up 30 years later going, they told me this was the path I was supposed to take to be happy. And they realized they climbed the wrong mountain or followed the wrong path. And it's wonderful you were able to learn that at a younger age so that you didn't waste decades trying to chase something.
And that's the subtitle of my book is Now What? It's holy shit, we're alive. Now what? And the now what comes from that moment when you're like, wait, I've done everything I was supposed to. I have the nice job. I have the fancy car. I have the hot partner. I have the kids. I have the vacations. And it's like, now what? And that's exactly where the subtitle comes from, is that idea.
And that's kind of what we used to have as the tagline was, you got rich, now what? Because it's that same concept. Okay, you chased the dream, you achieved it. Now what are you going to do with your life? And I think that's a hard thing for people to answer, is the now what?
Yeah. And I think, and that's the goal of my book, is to question that, is to have people look at maybe some of their actions and their intentions differently, and realizing, I feel like there's a lot of people that were like me the first time in that therapist's office. What's your trauma? Oh, I don't have any trauma, And I think a lot of people are that way, because I think there's a one negative I think that's going on in the world right now is people are comparing their trauma, right? Where it's like, I might have had something really difficult happen to me as a kid, but I know so-and-so who had this very disgusting, malicious act upon them. They were raped, or their brother was murdered, or something like that. Like, so they compare their trauma. So like, I shouldn't have shame or guilt or feel sorry about my stuff when someone else had a way, way worse. And so I hope to encourage people that like, hey, your trauma is valid, and a client I share in my book, I had a client who had a massive breakthrough, and all that happened was that a girl made fun of her for reading in second grade. She was a strong reader. She was a strong student, and a girl made fun of her for it. And that's not a big deal. It wasn't crazy. It's second graders being second graders. And she realized that was traumatic for her, because then she realized, oh, don't show your gifts because it'll offend others and they'll make fun of you. And that guided her life for 40 plus years. So what I'm trying to say is your trauma is valid. So let's first heighten the awareness behind it, and then let's deal with it. And when you deal with it, you can break through into these other layers of life.
Second grade seems to be really tough.
Yeah, second grade stuff. Yes. That 7-8-year-old window, there's a lot going on.
There is. You're first becoming aware. It's a shift in the way you look at the world and the way you do things. There's two shifting points. One is around 6 and 7. The other is, around 13, 14. Mm-hmm. And they are known stages in childhood development. And it's around these shifts that a lot of these problems come to be. And you just have to go back and face them. Is there anything else that we should have chatted about that we didn't get a chance to yet?
I would just hope everyone, a big takeaway from the book is I hope people, and we did touch on a little bit, would feel a deeper sense of gratitude and appreciation and a sense of awe and wonder for our place in the universe. Like the fact that we even get to have this experience, given the size of the universe and what we've explored and what we've found and what we've seen, the fact that we got dropped down on this planet that has other people and music and beaches and mountain ranges and food and experiences and books and all these incredible experiences, given what we found in the universe, 99.99999999999% of everything we've discovered using our NASA telescopes, there's nothing going on. So the fact that we're here having this experience, it's really beautiful.
Well, and I don't think our telescopes can't even see that far. I mean, they don't have the ability. I mean, we are an insignificant speck in the universe, but I don't think people realize that.
People don't realize, like, well, actually, how much we have discovered, with radiation. We've proven, with radiation that the universe is 13.8 billion years old. And everything we've seen out there, there's nothing going on. Like, as far as life forms, nothing. And the fact that we get to be here and have this experience, it's truly remarkable. It's statistically impossible given the size.
That it is. And here we are creating whatever it is that we choose to create from that.
How exciting. Gets me excited.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
The secret for me, and I believe to living an abundant life, truly is self-love. And like I mentioned earlier, it's like, because once you have that self-love, I feel like the natural state of love is expression. If you truly love yourself, you want to share that with the world. You want to naturally share your gifts. You want to share talent. You want to share connection. To living an abundant life, it really does start with a belief in self-confidence and self-love of yourself.
So very true. Mm-hmm. What do you wish you would have learned sooner that you learned later in life?
Good question. What do I wish I learned sooner? That having a lot of money or having a hot partner or having a cool car doesn't make you any happier. And on that same kind of pivoting a little bit off that, I wish I would have learned earlier that no one cares as much as you do. Meaning, if I went and bought that brand new Mercedes, nobody cared more than I did. And no one cares about your possessions more than you do.
It's true. Mm. It's all, it's about you. And you were lucky that you had enough money early in life to be able to do that, because, most people don't get that realization till they're in their 40s. And so you had that compressed, which
it's funny.
Helped you out.
Yeah, I went from driving a $116,000 Mercedes to now I drive a $25,000 Nissan, and I feel better in my head driving the Nissan than I do the Mercedes.
Well, you don't worry about it anymore, right?
Yeah, I don't care. It's just, this is not a thing for me. I realized after spending multiple $100,000 on different cars that I'm not a car guy. Some people are car guys, and I'm like, hey, if you're a car guy and that Mercedes is like, that's what your thing, then all for it. Go get it. That's your thing. Go for it. But for me, this is not my thing.
And that's the thing. I don't have a problem with people buying luxury items, but make sure it's the luxury you want.
Exactly.
And it's the thing you love, and then cut your spending in areas that you don't care about.
My luxury spending is when I'm traveling, I'm staying at the nicest hotel. Because I love nice hotels. I love it. It gets me fired up. It makes me feel alive. I'm stoked. So I know my luxury spending is going on hotels, and that's what I choose to do.
And that's fine. You have clarity, and it works.
It works.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Study, understand, and comprehend compounding interest. Not just financially, but with your habits as well. And I think once understanding the power of doing the right decision correctly over time equals extraordinary results spiritually, physically, mentally, relationships, financially.
And there was a book, I can't remember what the book was, and it talked about compounding with regards to health. And it took 3 guys, and it showed one guy, did everything right. One guy kind of followed the medium path, and one guy, just didn't worry about it. And after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you don't see anything. But when you start comparing at 3 years, 10 years, and 30 years, the curves are vastly, vastly different. And as we talked about earlier, these apply to every single part of your life.
Yeah, dramatically. Yeah.
If people would like to learn more about you, get the book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, my book just went live on Tuesday, August 10th on Amazon. It's titled Holy Shit, We're Alive. And within our first day, we were #1 Amazon bestseller. So I'm super proud of that, super grateful for that. You can find more about my work on thedailyshifts.com, which is my company. And I am most active on Instagram. So any questions, or I answer all my DMs, and you can find me on Instagram at Doug_Cartwright.
And we will put that into the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
That was a lovely conversation. Thank you, my friend.
Have you identified the scripts that are holding you back from the life you want? The theme that we talked about today of I am enough is more powerful than you can imagine. The reality is we all have head trash, because we've talked about it before. Learning to let go and just be comfortable and happy where we are is just so powerful. It's your journey, so enjoy the trip. Because it's sometime in the future. It's now. Now is the time to be happy and to be thrilled with your life. This week's action step was to ask yourself, what is my intention behind everything that we're doing? So if you're doing something, why do you do what you do? It's a powerful question, and too often we're running on autopilot. I'm currently reading the book Stealing Fire, The Secret Revolution of Altered States. And the one comment in the book is that most billionaires in the tech space use some sort of drug enhancement to come up with better solutions to their problems. It's not something I've tried, but research in this area is bringing us more answers, and some of the taboos are going away. I'm not sure where this is all going to lead, but we shall see. Next week, we have on Courtney Lynch to talk about her book, Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Great Success. She's got lots of actionable insights, and I think you will very much enjoy it. If you've enjoyed the podcast in this episode, would you do me a favor and share it with some friends? And if you do it on social media, please tag me. I appreciate that. Thanks so much for listening. Have an abundant week.